When the Roman legions departed from the shores of Britain in the year 410, never to return, they left behind more than just ruins. They left a legacy. In their wake, a distinct Romano-British culture emerged, shaped by the Roman introduction of advanced agriculture, urban planning, industrial craftsmanship, and monumental architecture. This culture blossomed in the province of Britannia, a unique fusion of Roman sophistication and the ancient Celtic traditions of the native Britons. Yet, not long after Rome's departure, waves of invaders arrived from across the North Sea. The Angles, Saxons and Jutes, tribes from what is now Germany and Denmark, descended upon the weakened land. Within a generation, they had seized control of much of Britannia, pushing the Romano-British people to the outskirts of the land. Many were enslaved or killed. Others fled westward, seeking refuge from the relentless advance. From this chaos rose a new order. Kingdoms such as Deira, Bernicia, Mercia, Wessex, Kent, and East Anglia took root, marking the birth of what would one day become England. This is a tale of the warriors, kings, and heathen seafarers who crossed stormy waters to conquer and settle a foreign land. These raiders would not only take the land, they would make it their own, ruling over it for more than 500 years, until the Norman invasion of 1066. According to Bede's Ecclesiastical History of the English People, in the early 5th century, there arose a powerful figure in post-Roman Britain, Vortigern, a warlord often remembered as a king of the Britons. He was regarded as the most influential ruler in the land at the time, striving to defend his territory from constant raids by the Picts and Scots. In a fateful decision, Vortigern invited the Angles, Saxons and Jutes, Germanic tribes from across the sea, to serve as allies in his struggle. The first leaders of these foreign warriors were two legendary brothers, Hengest and Horsa. Hailed as descendants of the god Woden, they were said to possess a divine lineage and carried with them an aura of myth and power. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the brothers landed at Ebbsfleet in the year 449 AD. There, they led their warriors to victory against the Picts wherever they met them in battle, encouraged by their early success and tempted by the fertile lands of Britain. Hengest and Horsa sent word back to their homeland, speaking of the weakness of the Britons and the wealth of the land. The brothers would ask for reinforcements, and their call was answered. Soon, waves of settlers arrived. The Saxons established themselves in Essex, Sussex and Wessex. The Jutes took Kent, the Isle of Wight, and parts of Hampshire, while the Angles spread into East Anglia, Mercia, and the northern territories of Deira and Bernicia, regions that would later form the Kingdom of Northumbria. However, the alliance between Vortigern and the Saxons did not last. According to the history of the kings of Britain, though largely considered legendary rather than factual, a pivotal tale emerges. Vortigern had become enamored with Rowena, the beautiful daughter of Hengest. Seizing the opportunity, Hengest gave her to Vortigern in marriage, using the union to weave a web of deceit. His aim was not merely alliance, but conquest. With cunning diplomacy, Hengest convinced Vortigern to allow even more of his countrymen to settle under the guise of protecting Britain. As the Saxons grew in power, so too did Vortigern's dependence on them. The Britons would soon grow suspicious, tensions mounted, and conflict between the two groups broke out. Battles would soon erupt, and in one of them, Horsa fell. To restore peace, Vortigern and Hengest agreed to hold a council. The meeting was to take place at a great banquet, and it was decided that no weapons were to be brought, a gathering of peace, not war. But Hengest had darker intentions. Secretly, he instructed each of his men to hide a long dagger beneath their cloaks. When the wine flowed freely, and when the Britons had let down their guard, Hengest cried out an order, a command that the Britons, unaware of its meaning, did not understand. The Saxons drew their hidden blades and slew any Briton beside them. In the chaos, Vortigern was taken prisoner. Now holding the king in his grasp, Hengest demanded control of Britain's fortified cities and strongholds, or Vortigern would lose his life. Powerless and humiliated, Vortigern yielded. With Britain leaderless and broken, Hengest marched his army through the land, laying waste to the countryside. He occupied London, then seized Winchester, York and Lincoln, burning towns and slaughtering as he went. Hengest crowned his triumph by claiming Kent, becoming its first Anglo-Saxon king, and founding a royal line that would rule for generations. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle records that in the year 457, Hengest and his son Esk fought the Britons at Crayford, slaying 4,000 and driving the survivors in terror to London. The final mention of Hengest appears in the Chronicle in the year 473. It states, "This year Hengest and Esk fought against the Welsh, and took countless spoils, and the Welsh fled before the Angles like fire." These accounts depict Hengest as a formidable warrior and cunning leader, whose strength in battle eclipsed that of many rival tribes in Britannia. Under his leadership, the Saxons secured their first kingdom on British soil. But this was only the beginning. One kingdom had been forged, and many more would follow as the Anglo-Saxons carved out a new order upon the ruins of Roman Britain. The region that would one day become East Anglia appears to have experienced significant depopulation during the 4th century. Once the homeland of the Iceni, an ancient tribe of eastern Britain during the early Roman era, it gradually fell silent. Its people dispersed or absorbed into the shifting tides of post-Roman Britain. The early history of East Anglia remains largely obscure, for a few records survive from this formative period. Most of its royal charters and written documents were lost, likely destroyed in the fires and violence brought by the Great Heathen Army in the 9th century. Yet, fragments endure, offering glimpses into its shadowy beginnings. Our knowledge of the early kings of East Anglia is preserved in part through later sources such as the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and Bede's History of the English People, written well after the kingdom's founding. The earliest rulers belonged to a dynasty known as the Wuffingers, named after its semi-legendary founder Wuffa. His name, thought to mean little wolf, suggests the Wuffingers may be interpreted as the kin of the wolf. According to the 13th century chronicler Roger of Wendover, Wuffa reigned from the years 571 to 578, though the original source of this information remains uncertain. Archaeological evidence, including burial sites and settlement remains, supports the idea of a large-scale migration into East Anglia by Germanic-speaking peoples. Modern simulations suggest that a movement of some 250,000 migrants from Denmark to East Anglia could have occurred within a few decades. Yet, it remains unclear whether all these newcomers considered themselves Angles, or if they came from a more diverse range of tribal identities. Nothing is definitively known of the earliest kings or how their rule was structured. However, a possible seat of royal authority may be indicated by the richly furnished ship burials of Sutton Hoo in eastern Suffolk, a site that suggests a people both seafaring and noble, forging a kingdom amid the ruins of Roman Britain. Thus, the invasion and settlement of East Anglia, the battles fought upon its soil, and the true origins of its monarchy remain lost to time. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the year 495 marked the arrival of Cerdic and his son Cynric on the shores of Britain. With a fleet of 5 ships, they landed at a place called Cerdic's Oar, believed to be in what is now Hampshire. In the year 508, Cerdic is said to have engaged in battle with a Brittonic king named Natanleod, whom he slew along with 5,000 of his warriors, securing a decisive and bloody victory. He established the Kingdom of Wessex in the year 519. Among Cerdic's conquests was the Isle of Wight, a strategic prize that he later granted to his kinsmen, Stuff and Whitgar. This act not only expanded his influence, but laid the foundations for future Saxon rule in the south. Yet the early history of Wessex, as recorded in the Chronicle, is not without its uncertainties. Scholars have noted inconsistencies, repeated accounts, conflicting dates, and legendary embellishments that cast doubt over the strict reliability of the narrative. Still, Cerdic's name looms large in the royal lineage. Among those who claimed this prestigious ancestry was Egbert, the King of Wessex, regarded as the forefather of the English royal house. From Cerdic's legendary landing sprang a dynasty that one day would unite the English kingdoms and shape the destiny of Britain itself. The early evolution of Mercia remains more shadowed in mystery than the better documented origins of Northumbria, Kent, or even Wessex. Unlike its neighbours, Mercia's emergence was gradual, and its rise to power obscured by the mists of time. While it eventually developed a formidable political structure, the kingdom embraced Christianity later than most of its Anglo-Saxon counterparts. The very name Mercia derives from Old English, meaning boundary folk, a title that hints at the kingdom's origins along the volatile frontier between the native Britons, often referred to as the Welsh, and the encroaching Anglo-Saxon settlers. The position would shape Mercia's identity and its destiny. The earliest figure recorded as a king of Mercia is Creoda, reportedly the great-grandson of Icel. In around the year 584, Creoda established a stronghold at Tamworth, which would later go on to become the royal seat of Mercian kings. Yet, even before Creoda, tradition speaks of Icel, believed to be the first true king of Mercia and the last ruler of the Angles in their continental homeland of Angelon, a peninsula on the Baltic coast of Jutland. Born in around the year 460, he is said to have migrated to Britain in around the year 515. In that same year, according to later sources, he assumed kingship in a region that would become Mercia. By the year 527, Icel had led his people through East Anglia and into Mercian territory. A 13th century chronicle, Flores Historiarum, reports pagans came from Germany and occupied East Anglia, that is, the country of the East Angles, and some of them invaded Mercia and waged war against the British. By the time of Icel's death in around the year 535, he reportedly controlled significant portions of both East Anglia and Mercia, earning him recognition as the first true ruler of the Mercian realm. Icel founded the royal house of Icel, also known as the Islingers, a dynasty that would reach its height under King Wuffa of Mercia in the 8th century. Wuffa achieved a level of dominance unmatched by any other Anglo-Saxon ruler before him, styling himself as the King of the English and exercising his rule across much of southern Britain. However, the power of the Islingers waned rapidly after Wuffa's death, and their grip on Mercia soon faded. Thus, the story of Mercia's birth remains largely untold, its foundations buried in forgotten battles, alliances, and unrecorded deeds. It rose from the borderlands as a kingdom forged in conflict, and though its earliest chronicles are lost, its legacy would echo across the history of England. Northumbria, the great northern kingdom of the Angles, stretched across what is now northern England and southeastern Scotland. In its earliest days, it existed not as a single realm, but as two distinct kingdoms, Bernicia in the north and Deira to the south. The first known ruler of Bernicia was Ælla, a figure shrouded in mystery. Ascending to power in the year 547, he reigned until the year 559. Though little survives about the details of his life, Ælla is remembered as the founding father of a royal line that would give rise to the kings of Northumbria. His bloodline would go on to shape the destiny of northern Britain. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, Ælla ruled for 12 years and established his stronghold at Bamborough. This fortress would become the seat of Bernician kings and a symbol of enduring power. Ælla's sons inherited both his ambition and his battles. For years, they waged war against a confederation of Brittonic kingdoms determined to resist the encroaching Angles. However, the alliance of the native rulers, formidable in unity, eventually collapsed into internal discord and civil war, paving the way for the Bernician line to expand southward and later forge the United Kingdom of Northumbria. Thus, from the wind-swept heights of Bamborough and the blood-soaked fields of northern Britain, the Kingdom of Northumbria arose, its foundations laid in conquest, its legacy carried forward by kings descended from Ælla, the first flame of Anglican rule in the north. It remains unclear whether Deira was ever an independent Brittonic kingdom. No British ruler has been definitively associated with the region in surviving genealogies, poetry, or chronicles of the early period, leaving its earliest history shrouded in silence. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, a ruler named Ælla rose to power in the year 560, though the chronicle refers to his realm as Northumbria. In truth, the land was still divided at that time between two distinct kingdoms, Deira in the south and Bernicia in the north. The circumstances of Ælla's death are cloaked in ambiguity. The chronicle states simply that he passed away in the year 588, yet a later source claims a more violent end, that Ælla was slain by Æthelfrith, a son of Æthelric and heir to the throne of Bernicia. This account, however, is contradicted by the Venerable Bede, who writes that Ælla was still reigning in the year 597, the year that Augustine of Canterbury arrived in Britain on his Christian mission. Regardless of the precise details, one fact remains clear. Following Ælla's death, his kin were forced into exile, and the rulers of Bernicia swiftly took control of Deira. In this act of conquest and unification, the two realms, once rivals, were merged into a single kingdom, Northumbria, destined to become one of the most powerful and culturally rich of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The question of how many Anglo-Saxons arrived in Britain and how many native Britons survived their coming has long stirred scholarly debate. What is known is that Hengest and Horsa were among the first major figures to land on Britannia's shores, carving out early victories against the island's native peoples and establishing themselves as kings. Their triumphs opened the floodgates. In their wake followed a steady tide of Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, many of whom would go on to found the kingdoms that rose from the ashes of war. In the aftermath of the Anglo-Saxon arrival, the cultural and linguistic landscape of Britain changed dramatically. The British and Latin tongues once spoken across the lowlands vanished, replaced by Old English, the direct ancestor of the language we speak today. The newcomers brought with them new ways of life. Rural settlements saw the emergence of distinct buildings. Burial practices also changed, as did the artifacts buried with the dead. Brooches, pottery, weapons, objects strikingly similar to those found in burial sites across the North Sea. Even religion was transformed. The native Britons had been a diverse people, some still clinging to the old polytheistic ways, others practicing a version of Christianity inherited from Roman times. The Anglo-Saxons, however, brought with them the gods of their Germanic homelands. Their kings were said to be descended from Woden himself, claiming divine ancestry to bolster their rule. Much remains uncertain. The scale, timing, and the nature of the Anglo-Saxon settlement is still fiercely debated. Medieval texts describe Saxon conquest and violence in the 5th century, but they are often vague, coloured by legend, and lacking in concrete detail. The near-complete absence of Celtic or Latin influence in the Old English language suggests a sudden and overwhelming dominance by Germanic speakers, perhaps implying either the displacement or assimilation of the native population. Following the legendary arrival of Hengest and Horsa in the year 449, the Kingdom of Kent soon emerged. In the decades that followed, Icel would found Mercia in around the year 515. Cerdic would establish Wessex in the year 519. Ida, the northern realm of Bernicia, in 547. Ælla, the southern kingdom of Deira, in the year 560. And Wuffa would establish East Anglia in the year 571. Within just over a century, all the major Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had been born. The native Britons had either been driven out from their lands or came under the rule of their new overlords, victims of a sweeping transformation, now veiled in the silence of forgotten battles and lost chronicles. The story of the Anglo-Saxon invasion remains one of the great enigmas of British history. Few reliable sources survive to illuminate its full scope. Yet, what cannot be denied is its outcome. Within a single century, the Anglo-Saxons had taken the land for themselves and crowned themselves kings. I would like to give a huge thank you to all of my members. Your contribution is valuable to the continuation of the channel, and I appreciate you all immensely. A special thank you to John Seitz. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you all next week for another History Profile.